Barack Obama's ability to tell compelling stories makes his speech an exceptionally powerful tool for English learners because storytelling builds a natural bridge between language, emotion, and understanding. When he speaks, he doesn't simply deliver information. He carries the listener through a journey shaped by experiences, conflicts, lessons, and resolutions. This structure helps learners follow along even if they miss some vocabulary. Human brains are wired for stories, and Obama uses this instinctive connection to keep his audience engaged. For English learners, this means that the message becomes easier to follow, and the language becomes easier to absorb. Instead of memorizing isolated words or grammar rules, learners get to experience language in motion, flowing through ideas that make sense together. His stories often start with a personal anecdote or a relatable challenge, which immediately captures attention and gives context. When you understand the situation, you understand the words more naturally. Another strength of Obama's storytelling is his clarity. He chooses words that fit the moment without being unnecessarily complicated. Even when he discusses deep or philosophical topics, he uses phrases and sentences that learners can digest. This clarity is not simplicity, it's precision. Obama crafts his speeches so that every line serves the message, and this makes the language feel purposeful. English learners listening to him can notice how he uses simple words to express profound meanings, proving that good communication doesn't require big vocabulary, but rather careful expression. His pronunciation, pacing, and pauses enhance this clarity by giving listeners time to absorb each idea before he moves to the next. When practicing English, learners can pause his speech, repeat after him, or shadow his delivery to internalize the rhythm of natural English. Obama's storytelling technique also highlights the importance of transitions. When he moves from one idea to another, he does it smoothly, guiding the listener through the thought process. These transitions, phrases like "now, let me be clear, but here's the thing, what this means is," or "I want to tell you a story," are incredibly valuable for English learners. They show how to connect ideas logically instead of jumping from point to point. Learners can practice using similar transition words in their own speaking or writing to improve coherence and flow. Understanding how ideas are linked helps the brain predict what might come next, aiding comprehension even if the vocabulary isn't fully known. This reinforces the idea that language learning isn't just about words, but about how those words are arranged to create meaning. Another reason Obama's speech is so beneficial is the emotional connection he builds. Stories packed with emotion, whether hope, humor, struggle, or triumph, activate deeper memory pathways. When you feel something while learning, you remember better. Obama often shares stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things or moments from his own life that shaped his values. These relatable narratives allow learners to understand cultural contexts, social values, and everyday experiences in American English, which are important parts of true language mastery. Emotionally engaging stories also make the learning experience enjoyable, which increases motivation. You listen not because you have to, but because you want to know what happens next, and this natural curiosity keeps you practicing longer without feeling tired. Obama also uses repetition in his storytelling, a powerful tool for language learning. He repeats key phrases to emphasize important ideas, and this repeated exposure helps learners hear the same words in different contexts. For example, he might repeat a phrase like "yes, we can," or "we are the change" throughout a speech. This technique reinforces meaning, rhythm, and pronunciation. Learners can take advantage of these repeated patterns by practicing them aloud, improving confidence and fluency. Repetition also helps learners understand how emphasis changes a sentence's effect. Obama's repeated phrases often build momentum in his message, showing how language can create energy, inspiration, and unity. A final aspect of Obama's storytelling that benefits English learners is its balance between formal and conversational tones. He speaks with elegance but not stiffness. His sentences are structured, yet his language feels approachable. He blends professional vocabulary with everyday expressions, creating a model for learners who want to sound natural without losing clarity. Listening to Obama helps learners internalize how English can be both expressive and respectful, persuasive yet warm. It teaches how tone, word choice, and narrative shape the listener's perception. This balance is especially useful for students preparing for presentations, interviews, speeches, or any situation requiring confident communication. In essence, Obama's storytelling is a masterclass in effective communication. For English learners, it provides a rich and inspiring environment to absorb vocabulary, understand grammar in context, develop pronunciation, and experience the emotional side of language. Every sentence carries intention, every story carries meaning, and every pause gives space to reflect and learn. Through his storytelling, learners don't just practice English. They experience it, feel it, and connect with it on a deeper level. Vocabulary building through Barack Obama's speeches becomes a natural and powerful process because the words you learn are connected to real meaning, emotion, and context. Instead of memorizing random vocabulary lists, learners hear expressions used exactly where they make sense, which improves understanding and long-term retention. Obama's word choice is deliberate. He selects terms that match the moment's tone, the story he's telling, or the message he wants to deliver. This means learners have a chance to absorb vocabulary that is both practical and expressive. When you hear a word used naturally in a sentence, your brain automatically begins to understand not just what the word means, but how it functions, what emotion it carries, and how it fits into conversation. This is why listening to him becomes a form of immersive learning, where vocabulary grows organically instead of feeling forced. Another powerful aspect of learning vocabulary through Obama's speech is the repeated exposure to thematic language. Many of his speeches revolve around ideas like hope, unity, equality, responsibility, and progress. As he discusses these themes, certain vocabulary appears repeatedly, but in slightly different contexts. This type of repetition is extremely beneficial for learners because it reinforces understanding while also showing how flexible English words can be. For example, hearing words like commitment, opportunity, challenge, or justice multiple times in various sentences helps learners grow familiar with them. Over time, these words stop feeling difficult or unfamiliar and begin to feel natural. Learners can also note how he pairs these words with supporting verbs or adjectives, giving them even more tools to express themselves confidently. Contextual vocabulary learning is also supported by how Obama describes situations, emotions, and actions. He often uses descriptive language that paints a picture, helping learners mentally visualize what he's saying. When you link a word to a mental image, your memory becomes stronger. Words used in a vivid setting are far easier to recall than words learned in isolation. For example, when Obama talks about a young student struggling but refusing to give up, you don't just hear the words, you see the image in your mind. This visualization anchors the vocabulary deeply. As learners repeatedly listen to these segments, the associated vocabulary becomes part of their active language. This style of learning mirrors how children learn their first language through repeated exposure, visual connection, and emotional resonance. Obama's ability to simplify complex language is another advantage for vocabulary development. Even when discussing political or philosophical topics, he breaks ideas down into accessible phrases. He avoids unnecessary jargon and prefers meaningful expression over complicated wording. This provides learners with vocabulary that is useful in everyday communication. Whether you're preparing for an English test, trying to improve your writing, or practicing speaking skills, the vocabulary from his speeches can be directly applied to real-life situations. By listening to his choice of synonyms, learners also discover alternative ways to express similar ideas. For instance, he may use words like struggle, challenge, and difficulty interchangeably, showing how slight differences in tone can shape meaning. A significant part of vocabulary learning through his speeches comes from emotional vocabulary, words that express feelings, values, and personal experiences. Obama frequently uses words that describe emotions such as courage, fear, hope, determination, disappointment, and resilience. These words are not only useful for describing personal experiences, but also essential for building deeper conversations in English. Emotional vocabulary is especially important for learners who want to sound natural and expressive instead of robotic or limited. Listening to how Obama uses emotional words helps learners understand the subtle ways English speakers communicate feelings without exaggeration or awkwardness. Another key element is cultural vocabulary. Obama often refers to American values, traditions, history, and everyday experiences. For English learners, understanding culture-related vocabulary is crucial because language and culture are inseparable. When you learn words connected to cultural references, you gain deeper insight into how people think and communicate in English-speaking societies. Obama's speeches include terms related to community, democracy, education, family, and civic duty, all of which enrich a learner's cultural understanding. These words are commonly used in news, academic settings, and public discussions, making them valuable for anyone aiming to improve their English for professional or educational purposes. Studying vocabulary from Obama's speeches also encourages active practice. Learners can pause the speech, write down new words, look up meanings, and try to use them in sentences. Because the vocabulary is tied to themes and stories, reviewing it becomes easier. When learners revisit the speech later, they recognize the words immediately, reinforcing memory. This cycle of listening, noting, practicing, and reviewing accelerates vocabulary expansion. Moreover, shadowing his speech, repeating phrases exactly as he says them, helps learners practice pronunciation along with vocabulary. When you say a word out loud, especially within a meaningful sentence, it becomes part of your active vocabulary faster. Ultimately, building vocabulary from Obama's speeches enables learners to grow in a natural, engaging, and meaningful way. The words are not random. They are connected to ideas that inspire and motivate. As learners continue listening, they start understanding more without needing translations. Vocabulary becomes intuitive rather than memorized. This intuitive understanding leads to more confidence, clearer expression, and greater fluency. Through contextual learning, emotional connection, repetition, and active practice, Obama's speeches offer a powerful environment for developing a richer, more functional English vocabulary that learners can use in real conversations, writing, and everyday life. Practicing pronunciation and intonation through Barack Obama's speeches becomes an incredibly effective method for English learners because his speaking style offers clarity, rhythm, and emotional precision that are easy to imitate yet rich enough to challenge and improve one's skills. When Obama speaks, his voice carries a deliberate pace, neither too fast nor too slow, which allows learners to catch individual sounds, stress patterns, and word connections. This pacing is ideal for shadowing, a technique where learners repeat the speech in real time. Because his words are articulated clearly, learners can mimic his mouth movements, timing, and tone, gradually shaping their own pronunciation to sound more fluent and natural. The consistent emphasis he places on key phrases helps learners understand how English relies heavily on stress and intonation, not just on correct grammar. One of Obama's strongest linguistic characteristics is his mastery of intonation. English, unlike many languages, uses pitch variation to express emotion, highlight importance, or show contrast. Obama skillfully uses rising tones to build anticipation and falling tones to deliver resolution. By listening and repeating after him, learners can start to internalize how intonation works in real speech. For example, he may raise his pitch slightly to emphasize a hope-filled message or lower it to convey seriousness or determination. These subtle vocal shifts carry powerful meaning. When learners mimic these patterns, they not only improve pronunciation, but also start sounding more expressive and confident. Intonation is often overlooked in traditional language learning, but Obama's speeches provide a masterclass in how tone transforms meaning. Another valuable aspect of practicing through his speeches is the natural rhythm of his sentences. Obama often uses a cadence that resembles music's, smooth, flowing, and balanced. English has a stress-timed rhythm, and learning it can be challenging for speakers of syllable-timed languages. Obama's precise use of pauses and stress helps learners feel the beat of English more clearly. He places strong stress on important words and softens less important ones, creating a pattern that listeners can follow. When learners practice this rhythm, their speech becomes easier to understand and more pleasant to hear. They learn how to avoid monotone speech and how to break sentences into meaningful chunks. This is particularly useful for anyone preparing for presentations, interviews, or public speaking in English. In addition to rhythm, Obama's speeches demonstrate the importance of articulation, the way individual sounds are produced. English includes many sounds that are difficult for learners, such as the th, the soft r, and the difference between long and short vowels. Because Obama pronounces these sounds clearly and consistently, learners can use his speech as a guide. Repeating tricky words or phrases after him helps learners develop muscle memory in their tongue and jaw movements. Over time, this leads to more accurate pronunciation and fewer misunderstandings in conversation. Articulation practice also improves listening skills, as learners begin recognizing sound differences they previously missed. Shadowing Obama's speeches also builds fluency. Fluency is more than speaking fast, it's about speaking smoothly without unnecessary hesitation. When learners follow along with his speech, they push themselves to keep pace, which trains their brain to think and speak simultaneously. At first, shadowing may feel challenging, especially when encountering unfamiliar words. However, with repetition, the speech begins to flow more naturally. Learners start connecting words without pausing between them, imitating Obama's use of linking sounds. For instance, when he says going to, it might sound like gonna, and when he says want to, it may sound like wanna. These natural contractions make spoken English sound fluid, and practicing them helps learners sound more native-like while maintaining clarity. Another advantage is that Obama's speeches often include a wide range of emotions: calm reflection, passionate conviction, gentle reassurance, firm leadership. Practicing these emotional tones helps learners break out of flat, robotic speech. Emotion gives meaning to language. When a learner practices speaking with passion or emphasis, they develop a deeper sense of how English conveys feelings. Obama's use of rhetorical techniques, such as repetition, contrast, and crescendos, offers learners the chance to practice dramatic expression in a controlled and structured way. This is not only useful for public speaking, but also for everyday conversations, where speaking with emotion helps build clearer communication and stronger personal connections. Listening to Obama also helps learners understand attitude and nuance in English. Tone of voice can completely change the meaning of a sentence. A phrase spoken with confidence may sound inspiring, while the same phrase spoken weakly may sound uncertain. Obama's confident delivery teaches learners how to project assertiveness without aggression and warmth without exaggeration. When learners imitate this balance, their own communication skills improve across all areas: professional, academic, and social. Practicing pronunciation and intonation through Obama's speeches also builds self-confidence. Many English learners hesitate to speak because they fear making mistakes or sounding unnatural. Shadowing a skilled speaker like Obama gives them a model to follow, reducing anxiety. As learners gradually hear themselves sounding clearer and more expressive, their confidence grows. They begin to trust their voice and feel more comfortable engaging in conversations, debates, or presentations. Overall, practicing pronunciation and intonation with Obama's speeches is more than a language exercise. It's a holistic approach to mastering spoken English. Through pacing, rhythm, articulation, emotional tone, and expressive delivery, learners gain practical skills that vastly improve their spoken communication. By consistently mimicking his style, they develop a natural flow, a stronger voice, and a deeper connection to the language. Understanding sentence structure and grammar through Obama's speeches provides learners with a dynamic, real-world example of how English works beyond textbooks and memorized rules. Grammar becomes alive when it is observed in meaningful communication, and Obama's speeches offer exactly that: real usage, purposeful phrasing, and intentional structure. When he speaks, he doesn't simply follow rules. He uses language as a tool to persuade, inspire, and connect. This gives learners a chance to see how grammar supports communication rather than restricts it. Observing how he builds sentences, balances clauses, and shifts between ideas helps learners internalize grammar naturally, without needing to analyze every detail like a formal lesson. It becomes intuitive, something you feel rather than break down mechanically. One of the first grammatical elements learners notice in his speech is his use of parallel structure. This is when similar words or phrases are arranged in a balanced pattern to create rhythm and emphasis. For example, Obama may say things like "we must work harder, dream bigger, and stand stronger." The repeated structure makes the message easier to follow and more powerful. When learners hear these patterns, they begin to understand how English uses repetition not just for style but also for clarity. Parallel structure is commonly found in essays, speeches, and professional writing, and observing it in action helps learners apply it naturally in their own communication. It improves writing flow and makes spoken English sound more confident. Another element Obama frequently uses is the combination of short, clear sentences with longer, more complex ones. This variety creates a natural rhythm that keeps the audience engaged. Short sentences provide impact, long sentences provide detail. When learners study his speech, they can see how adding clauses using words like because, although, when, or which adds layers of meaning without becoming confusing. This is an important grammar skill, learning how to expand ideas effectively. By listening closely, learners can identify how he introduces a main idea, adds supporting information, and then returns to the main point without losing clarity. This ability to balance simplicity with complexity is what makes language rich and expressive. Obama also demonstrates how to use conditional sentences in meaningful ways. When he speaks about hopes, possibilities, or responsibilities, he often uses if to describe outcomes. For example, he might say, "If we work together, we can build a better future." This shows learners how conditionals are used to imagine scenarios, express consequences, or motivate action. Many learners struggle with conditionals in grammar exercises, but hearing them used naturally in real speech builds intuitive understanding. They learn how tone and context influence meaning, how "if" can express warning, hope, advice, or encouragement depending on how it is delivered. Pronoun usage is another valuable aspect of Obama's sentence structure. He often uses we, us, and our to build unity. showing how pronouns can influence tone and connection. This teaches learners that grammar isn't just about correctness, it's also about effect. The choice of pronouns shapes the relationship between speaker and listener. When learners listen to how Obama shifts between I to share personal experiences and we to include the audience, they see how grammar can build empathy and belonging. Understanding these subtle choices helps learners improve not only their grammar, but also their communication strategy. Verb tenses in Obama's speeches are another important learning tool. He shifts naturally between past tense for storytelling, present tense for current issues, and future tense for goals or aspirations. Hearing these tense shifts in meaningful context helps learners understand why they matter and how to use them correctly. For example, when he reflects on a past challenge, he uses past tense to describe actions and results. Then, he smoothly transitions to present tense to discuss ongoing issues and future tense to express hope or direction. These transitions are essential for anyone who wants to speak clearly about different time periods without confusing the listener. Prepositions, often one of the hardest parts of English grammar, also become easier to understand when heard in natural speech. Obama uses phrases like "on this day," "for our future," "with determination," or "in our communities." Listening repeatedly helps learners notice which prepositions match which nouns, making the learning more organic. Instead of memorizing lists, learners absorb prepositions through context and frequency. Finally, one of the biggest grammar lessons from Obama's speeches is how he organizes ideas logically. He often starts with a broad statement, narrows it down with details, illustrates it with an example, and then ties everything back to a central point. This structure is essential for coherent writing and speaking. It teaches learners how to move from general to specific, how to support an argument, and how to conclude effectively without repeating unnecessarily. This kind of organization is a major skill for essays, interviews, and presentations. Overall, learning grammar through Obama's speech means learning grammar as it is truly meant to be used: clear, expressive, intentional, and deeply connected to meaning. By observing how he structures sentences, transitions between ideas, and applies grammatical choices for emotional effect, learners gain a richer understanding of English that goes far beyond traditional lessons. Gaining motivation while improving language skills through Barack Obama's speeches creates a powerful learning experience because it connects emotional inspiration with practical skill building. When learners listen to Obama, they aren't just listening to English. They are listening to a message that encourages them to grow, believe in themselves, and push past obstacles. This emotional impact becomes a driving force in language learning, which is often long and challenging. Motivation is the key factor that determines whether a learner continues practicing or gives up halfway. Obama's speeches provide that motivational spark by speaking directly to human aspiration, resilience, and hope. When learners feel uplifted, they naturally want to engage more with the language, replay the speech, understand the meaning, and learn from the message. This emotional connection transforms learning from a chore into a rewarding journey. Obama's speeches are filled with themes that speak to personal empowerment: believing in your potential, taking responsibility, staying persistent, and working toward your goals. These themes resonate with learners who may feel discouraged by the difficulties of mastering English. Hearing someone speak passionately about overcoming challenges reminds them that learning a language is also a journey that requires patience and perseverance. It creates a mindset where mistakes become learning opportunities rather than failures. Obama often emphasizes the importance of effort over perfection, which is exactly what learners need to hear. This helps them overcome the fear of speaking, the fear of being judged, or the frustration of not understanding everything immediately. When motivation increases, confidence follows. One of the most powerful aspects of Obama's speeches is how he makes listeners feel seen and valued. He speaks in a way that touches the emotions of ordinary people, celebrating their struggles, dreams, and contributions. When learners listen to him, they feel included and understood. This feeling of connection inspires them to keep learning because they begin to believe that they, too, can express themselves clearly and confidently in English. They start imagining themselves communicating with the same clarity and purpose. This kind of emotional alignment is rare in typical English lessons, which often feel dry and disconnected from real life. Obama's speeches, on the other hand, are full of heart and humanity, making language learning meaningful beyond vocabulary and grammar. Another motivational factor is the sense of purpose that his speeches evoke. Obama doesn't just talk about personal growth, he talks about making a difference, contributing to society, and being part of something larger. When learners engage with such messages, they often feel inspired to improve not just their English, but also their mindset, habits, and ambitions. This higher purpose gives them a deeper reason to continue practicing. They start to see English as a tool for opportunity, a way to connect with the world, access education, improve career prospects, and share their own stories. When learners find purpose in language learning, they naturally stay motivated. Moreover, Obama's speeches teach resilience through real-life examples. He often shares stories of individuals who faced hardship yet never gave up. These stories resonate with learners who may be struggling with pronunciation, grammar, or fluency. The message becomes clear: growth takes time, but persistence pays off. This encourages learners to keep practicing daily, even if progress seems slow. Motivation grounded in resilience is long-lasting because it teaches learners to push through difficulties rather than avoid them. As they continue listening, repeating, and understanding more of the speech, they notice their own improvement, which becomes further motivation to continue. There's also the motivational boost that comes from feeling progress. When learners repeatedly listen to Obama and start understanding more words, phrases, or ideas, they experience a sense of achievement. Every time a sentence becomes clearer or a vocabulary word becomes familiar, their confidence grows. This sense of progress builds momentum. The more they feel capable, the more they want to keep going. This is one of the most powerful cycles in language learning. Obama's clear, structured, and expressive speech style makes it easier for learners to notice this growth, fueling their motivation. Another aspect of motivation comes from the inspiration to speak confidently. Obama's speaking style, calm, assured, thoughtful, serves as a model of how powerful communication can be. When learners listen to him, they start to imagine themselves communicating with similar clarity and impact. This vision inspires them to practice speaking more often, to engage in conversations, and to take risks in using new vocabulary. They begin to understand that learning English is not just about accuracy, but also about expression, tone, and belief in one's voice. This shift in perspective helps learners overcome hesitation and speak more freely. Motivation is also reinforced by the emotional consistency of his speeches. Whether he talks about unity, progress, equality, or hope, there is always a positive and uplifting tone. This helps create a positive learning environment. When learners study while feeling inspired, their brain absorbs information more effectively. Positive emotions enhance memory, focus, and creativity, all essential for mastering a language. Obama's optimistic tone acts like fuel for the learner's mindset, making study sessions feel lighter and more enjoyable. Finally, Obama's speeches help learners connect language learning to real-life values. They are not just learning English, they are learning ideas that shape character, ambition, and world-view. This depth adds meaning to the learning process, making it something they want to do, not something they have to do. When meaning and motivation combine, progress becomes inevitable. In the end, Obama's speeches offer far more than listening practice. They provide emotional strength, inspiration, hope, and purpose, all of which drive learners to keep improving. The motivation they gain from his words becomes the engine that powers their language journey, making them more consistent, confident, and determined to achieve fluency.